It had been almost a year since Grace's passing, and the clinic I had established was thriving. The villagers, once distant and cold, now greeted me with warmth and respect. I had built a life I was proud of, and I was finally at peace with my past, or so I thought. One afternoon, as I was finishing up with a patient, one of the nurses approached me with a strange look on her face. "Doctor." "Maria," she said hesitantly. "There's someone here to see you. She says she's your mother." My heart skipped a beat. My mother? After all these years? I hadn't seen or heard from her since the day she walked out of our hut and out of my life. The memories of that day came rushing back, along with a flood of emotions: anger, hurt, confusion. What could she possibly want now? "Where is she?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "In the waiting area," the nurse replied, her eyes filled with concern. I nodded and took a deep breath before walking out to meet her. There, sitting on one of the wooden benches, was the woman who had given birth to me, the woman who had abandoned me. She looked older, her face lined with wrinkles, her hair streaked with gray. But those eyes, the ones I had once searched for comfort in, were unmistakable. "Maria," she said softly, rising to her feet as soon as she saw me. Her voice trembled, and I could see the nervousness in her posture. "It's been so long." I stood there, rooted to the spot, unsure of what to say or do. This was the woman who had left me when I needed her the most. She had walked away from me, leaving me behind because of my disability. And yet, here she was, standing before me, seeking something I wasn't sure I was ready to give. I heard about everything you've accomplished," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so proud of you, Maria. I always knew you were special." Her words stung, and I felt the anger I had buried for so long bubbling to the surface. How could she say that? How could she stand there and act as if she hadn't left me behind? Left me to fend for myself? "Why are you here?" I finally asked, my voice cold and distant. She flinched at the harshness of my tone, but she didn't back down. "I wanted to see you, to tell you how sorry I am for everything. I made a terrible mistake, Maria. I was scared, and I didn't know how to handle your condition. Everyone told me that you were cursed, that staying would bring more misfortune to our family. I was weak, and I let my fear take over. But I've regretted that decision every day since." Her voice wavered, and I could see the weight of her guilt etched into her face. But it wasn't enough. My anger surged. "Regret? You left me because I was crippled, because I wasn't the child you wanted. You abandoned me, and now you want forgiveness." I shook my head. "Why now?" Tears filled her eyes. She took a deep breath before answering, her voice barely audible. "Maria, I've suffered more than you know. After I left you, I tried to move on, to build a life without you. But I was never able to have another child. For years I struggled to conceive. I remarried 10 times, desperate for a family, but every husband eventually turned me away because of my barrenness. Each time I was forced out, discarded like something worthless. I wandered from one man to the next, searching for something, anything, that could fill the emptiness I felt." She paused, her voice breaking. "I was alone, Maria. Truly alone. And it wasn't until much later that I realized the child I had abandoned, the child I thought was my curse, was my only hope. You were the one thing I had that mattered. But by then, it was too late. I had lost everything. My marriages, my dignity, and I was left with nothing but the regret of leaving you behind. The stone that I had once rejected. You've become the cornerstone of my life." You're all I have left." Her confession hit me like a wave, crashing over the walls of anger I had built around my heart. The image of my mother, strong, proud, and determined, was now replaced by the reality of her suffering. The years had not been kind to her. She had been broken by her choices, haunted by the ghosts of the children she never had, the families she could never build. But still, I couldn't shake the hurt of her abandonment. "You left me, Mother," I said, my voice trembling with pain. "You left me because I was different. And now you come back because you couldn't have another child? You think that makes everything okay?" "No, Maria," she whispered, her face crumpling. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you. I wanted you to know how sorry I am. I wanted to see you one last time. To say that I'm proud of the woman you've become. You're everything I could never be. You've overcome everything I was too weak to face. I only wish I could have been the mother you deserved." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of years lost. I stood there staring at her, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Could I forgive her? Could I let go of the pain she had caused me? The mother I had longed for had come back, not as the figure of my childhood dreams, but as a broken woman seeking redemption. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I finally said, my voice cracking with the truth. "You left me when I needed you. And now, after all these years, you come back, and you expect me to just forget." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I don't expect you to forget, Maria. But I want you to know how sorry I am. I've thought about you every day since I left. I remarried. I tried to rebuild my life, but I never forgot about you. I never stopped thinking about the child I abandoned." The silence between us stretched, the weight of the past pressing down on us both. I thought about Grace, about the woman who had filled the void my mother had left. Grace had been the one to guide me, to believe in me, to show me love when my own mother had walked away. Could I truly find it in my heart to forgive this woman, the one who had caused me so much pain? "I don't know if I can forget what you did," I said quietly. "But maybe, just maybe, I can try to forgive you." My mother's eyes filled with hope. "Maria, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you. I want to be part of your life again, if you'll let me." The days that followed were heavy with uncertainty. My mother remained in the village, visiting me at the clinic every day, attempting to weave herself back into my life. Each visit was a quiet reminder of the years lost between us, of the mother I had needed and the stranger who had taken her place. It wasn't easy to be around her. Every conversation was steeped in an unspoken past, filled with emotions neither of us had the words to express. But still, she stayed. And despite the deep well of pain that lingered within me, part of me was curious. Curious about the woman she had become and the story of her suffering. Her words about being married 10 times haunted me. I couldn't shake the image of her being rejected again and again, each man turning her away because of her barrenness, just as she had turned me away because of my disability. There was a day when I finally asked. I don't know what compelled me to do it. Perhaps it was the look of longing in her eyes when she watched me work, or the way she lingered outside my home as if waiting for permission to be part of my life. "Tell me," I said one evening as we sat on the clinic's porch, the setting sun casting an orange glow over the village. "What happened to you after you left?" She was silent for a long time, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "After I left you, I remarried. I thought if I could start over, have another child, it would erase the guilt I felt. But nothing worked. Years passed and I still hadn't conceived. My first husband grew impatient, then angry. One night, he told me I was barren, that I was worthless to him without a child. He threw me out, just like that. She paused, her eyes distant as if she were reliving the memory. I tried again, and again. 10 times, Maria, 10 marriages, 10 rejections, each one more brutal than the last. Each husband telling me that I wasn't good enough because I couldn't give them children. It wasn't until the last one that I realized the truth. What I'd done to you, what they were doing to me. I listened, my heart heavy with the weight of her story. The pain she had experienced was real, and in some cruel way it mirrored my own. But still, I couldn't forget that she had chosen to walk away from me first. I became a wanderer, she continued, her voice trembling. No one wanted me. I had no family, no home. I wandered from village to village, begging for food, hoping that somehow the curse would be lifted. But deep down, I knew that the only curse was the one I had placed on myself the day I left you. I thought I was escaping a life of suffering, but instead, I was running straight into it. Her confession lingered in the air between us. I looked at her, this woman who had once been so strong in my childhood memories. And now, she seemed fragile, a shadow of her former self. The years had not only worn down her body, but had stripped away the pride that had once defined her. I don't know how to forgive you, I said quietly, looking out at the horizon. It's hard to let go of everything you did. She nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I understand. I don't expect it to happen overnight, Maria. I just want a chance to be part of your life, to prove that I've changed. As the weeks passed, I found myself thinking more and more about Grace. She had stepped into my life when my mother had left, becoming the guiding light that carried me through the darkest times. It was Grace who had taught me to embrace who I was, to find strength in my differences, and to forgive those who had hurt me, even when forgiveness felt impossible. One evening, I went to Grace's grave. It had become my sanctuary, a place where I could find peace and clarity. The moonlight bathed the village in a soft, silvery glow as I knelt by her grave and laid a single flower at its base. Grace, I whispered, my voice trembling. What would you do? How would you handle this? The wind rustled the leaves overhead, and in the quiet of the night, I felt her presence. Grace had always believed in forgiveness, in rising above the pain that life dealt. She had shown me that love, true, unconditional love, could heal even the deepest wounds. As I sat there, I realized that holding on to my anger toward my mother was only hurting me. It was keeping me trapped in the past, preventing me from moving forward. Grace had always told me that forgiveness wasn't about the other person. It was about freeing yourself from the burden of hatred. That night, I made a decision. I would try. I would try to forgive my mother, not for her sake, but for mine. Because if I held on to my anger, I would never truly heal. And I owed it to myself, and to Grace, to live a life free of that pain. The next day, I invited my mother to my home. She arrived, nervous and unsure, her hands trembling as she held a small bundle wrapped in cloth. It was the first time I had ever invited her into my space, and I could see the hope in her eyes as she stepped inside. I've been thinking, I said, as we sat down together. I want to try. I want to try to forgive you. But it's going to take time. Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. Thank you, Maria. I know it won't be easy, but I'll do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness. In the days that followed, we began to rebuild our relationship, one small step at a time. My mother started helping out at the clinic, doing simple tasks like cleaning and organizing supplies. The villagers who had once spoken ill of her were now more accepting. They saw the effort she was making, and slowly, they began to welcome her back into the community. One day, as we worked side by side, my mother turned to me with a tentative smile. "Maria, I've been thinking. I want to help other women who are going through what I did. I want to start a support group to talk to them about the importance of accepting and loving their children no matter what. Maybe I can prevent someone else from making the same mistake I did." Her words took me by surprise, but they also filled me with a sense of pride. Here was the woman who had once abandoned me, now wanting to help others avoid the same mistake. It was a testament to how far she had come, and it gave me hope that we could continue to heal together. As time passed, my mother's presence became a steady part of my life. We weren't perfect, and there were still moments when the pain of the past resurfaced, but we were both committed to healing. I watched her grow into a new role, helping women in the village and advocating for acceptance and love. Through it all, I realized that Grace's legacy was still alive, not just in the clinic I had built, but in the way I had learned to forgive, to open my heart again. Forgiveness is a journey, and ours was far from over. There were still days when the past felt too close, when the hurt resurfaced, and I had to remind myself of the progress we had made. But with each passing day, I felt the burden of that pain lighten, replaced by something new: hope, love, and the possibility of a future where we could both find peace. In the end, I realized that Grace's lessons had guided me once again. She had taught me the power of love and forgiveness, the strength that comes from letting go of the past and embracing the future. My mother may have abandoned me once, but in finding the courage to forgive her, I was honoring the legacy of the woman who had been my true hero. Grace, my stepmom, my hero, had saved me once, and now, in her memory, I was saving myself.